So, you want to buy a racetrack. Not a go-kart loop, not a drag strip behind a gas station, a real one. The kind that hosts a Grand Prix or a Cup Series race. And here's the part that should worry you before you sign anything. The race itself, the actual thing your track exists for, is very likely to lose you money. Formula One pulled in $3.65 billion in 2024, and race promotion fees, the money circuits pay just to be on the calendar, made up 29% of that. Almost $1.1 billion a year flows out of racetracks and into one company's bank account. Owning the track that everyone associates with the race is, very often, the least profitable part of the entire business. Which is a strange way to run the most famous asset in the sport, but that's exactly what it is. So, why do billionaires, state governments, and sovereign wealth funds keep lining up to build them anyway? Let's find out what you're actually buying. First, the price list, because it moves fast. At the bottom, a basic short oval or road course, a few $1,000,000, mostly asphalt and grandstands, the kind of place where local racing happens on a Saturday night. One step up, a NASCAR-grade intermediate oval. Charlotte Motor Speedway, built in 1960, cost $2 million. Talladega, the largest oval in NASCAR, cost $5 million in 1969. Adjusted for inflation, that's still less than the price of a nice apartment building in Manhattan, and it now seats 80,000 people twice a year. Then you jump into an entirely different universe, the purpose-built Formula One circuit. Circuit of the Americas outside Austin cost $400 million and needed 1,000 acres of land, 4 million cubic yards of moved earth, and a 251-foot observation tower before a single car turned a wheel. Las Vegas took a different approach entirely. Instead of buying land in the desert, Liberty Media bought a chunk of the strip itself, spent roughly $500 million building a circuit through public streets, and dropped another $435 million in 2023 alone, just on security, traffic control, and safety infrastructure for one race weekend. And at the very top of the market, Madrid's brand new street circuit for the 2026 Spanish Grand Prix, a comparatively modest 83.2 million euros, because it is mostly repurposed public roads around a convention center. Same sport, same championship, a 5 times difference in construction cost, depending entirely on whether you're building around a city or building a city. Real transactions do happen at this scale, and the biggest one in American racing history looks suspiciously like a company buying itself. It closed in October 2019 when NASCAR, the sanctioning body, the people who run the sport, bought International Speedway Corporation, the company that owned Daytona, Talladega, and 10 other tracks, for $2 billion in cash. Same family, the Francis, controlling both sides of the negotiating table. Nobody haggled very hard. 4 years earlier, Daytona itself finished a $400 million renovation called Daytona Rising. With 31 million pounds of steel, 101,500 new seats, 60 luxury suites, and 40 escalators. The track had been standing since 1959. It took until 2016 to give it an interior that matched a modern NFL stadium. Now, here's the size of what you're actually buying. Circuit of the Americas sits on 1,000 acres, roughly 750 football fields. Daytona holds just over 101,000 people in permanent seating, expandable to 125,000. Charlotte Motor Speedway seats 95,000 twice a year for the Coca-Cola 600 and generates an estimated $450 million in regional economic impact annually. But here's the detail that matters more than any of those numbers. Charlotte hosts roughly 380 events a year, and only 2 of them are the NASCAR races anyone actually remembers. Everything else, concerts, car shows, driving schools, private testing days, happens on the other 378 events, which turns out to be where a surprising amount of the real money hides. So where does the money actually come from? not from where you'd think. If you own an F1 grade circuit, Formula One Management, now owned by Liberty Media, which bought the entire sport for $8 billion in 2017, charges you an annual hosting fee simply for the right to appear on the calendar. Monaco, the most prestigious race in the sport's history, pays the least, $20 million a year, because F1 needs Monaco more than Monaco needs F1. Qatar, a newcomer trying to buy relevance, pays $55 million a year on a 10-year deal. The average across the calendar is around $30 million, and it climbs roughly 5% a year, compounding, whether or not your race actually turns a profit that year. In exchange, you get to keep ticketing, hospitality, and local sponsorship. Except that's the small pot. The real money, $936 million a year in global broadcast rights, $445 million in global sponsorship, never touches your bank account at all. It goes straight to Liberty Media, and you just paid them for the privilege of watching it happen on your own asphalt. This is where Circuit of the Americas becomes the perfect case study, because the state of Texas essentially pays your hosting fee for you. Back in 2010, Texas Comptroller Susan Combs promised the circuit $25 million a year for 10 years from something called the Major Events Trust Fund, public money, justified on the theory that out-of-state visitors generate enough hotel and sales tax to cover it. In 2016, a new administration recalculated the formula and cut the payment to $19.5 million overnight. The circuit's owner, Bobby Epstein, told the Austin American-Statesman, in his words, that the track was screwed. Bernie Ecclestone himself said the U.S. Grand Prix might not survive the cut. The race survived, but the lesson stuck. The most reliable revenue stream at an American F1 circuit isn't the fans. It's the taxpayer. And it turns out taxpayers can change their mind a lot faster than a 10-year contract suggests they should be able to. For a track that isn't chasing F1 at all, a NASCAR oval, for instance, the model flips. You're not paying a sanctioning body for the privilege of hosting. NASCAR effectively owns most of its own premier venues outright after the 2019 buyout, meaning ticketing, sponsorship, TV, suites, and non-race day rentals all flow back to the same company. This is the entire logic behind why NASCAR spent $2 billion buying its own tracks instead of just sanctioning races at tracks owned by someone else. Cut out the middleman, and suddenly you're the middleman. And then there's Las Vegas, which broke the model completely. Liberty Media didn't lease a slot to a third-party promoter. It promoted the race itself, kept every dollar of ticketing, sponsorship, and hospitality, and simply absorbed the entire construction and operating cost as a direct investment. No hosting fee changes hands because Liberty Media is paying itself. It's the closest thing in this business to vertical integration. Own the sport, own the calendar slot, own the circuit, own the audience. But racing itself, on race day, is genuinely one of the most labor-intensive events in professional sport, and almost none of that labor gets paid. A recent FIA study found it takes an average of 838 trained officials, mostly marshals in flame-retardant orange overalls, to safely run a single Grand Prix weekend. Across a 24-race season, that's over 20,000 people, contributing nearly 1 million hours of combined labor a year. The 24 Hours of Le Mans alone needs more than 3,000 officials working in shifts around the clock. And the overwhelming majority of them are unpaid volunteers who take annual leave from their day jobs to stand trackside in the rain. It's the only major global sport where the people responsible for pulling a driver out of a burning car are, technically, doing everyone a favor. The dark side of this business isn't fraud exactly. It's civil engineering hubris, and the best example of it sits in the forests of Western Germany. The Nurburgring's legendary Nordschleife has been a mecca for automotive engineers and enthusiasts since 1927. In the mid-2000s, the state government of Rhineland-Palatinate, which owned the track, decided the circuit needed more than racing. It needed a resort. They built a hotel, an amusement park, a casino wing, all attached to the world's most famous racetrack, financed almost entirely on state-backed debt. By 2012, that debt had ballooned past 330 million euros. The European Commission rejected an emergency bailout as illegal state aid, and the Nurburgring was formally declared bankrupt, one of the most storied, most dangerous circuits on the planet in insolvency proceedings, because a state government decided what the green hell really needed was a Ferris wheel. It went up for sale in 2013 with an asking price of $161 million. It sold in 2014 to a German auto parts supplier, Capricorn Group, for roughly $164 million combined, a fraction of the hundreds of millions the state had actually poured into the resort it built next door. The track survived. The taxpayers who financed the theme park did not get their money back, and racing has never fully separated itself from its oldest risk, the physical one. In 1955, at Le Mans, a car launched into the crowd and killed more than 80 spectators in what remains the deadliest disaster in motorsport history. And it's the reason every circuit built since then has guardrails, runoff zones, and spectator barriers set back from the racing line by design, not by accident. Every dollar spent today on Armco barriers, gravel traps, and catch fencing traces back to a lesson paid for in the worst possible currency. Time to pull it all together and answer the actual question. How much money do you make if you do this right? Option 1. A small regional short track. Investment of roughly $3 to $5 million. Revenue comes from weekly local racing, rental days, and a modest concessions and sponsorship base. Call it $500,000 to $1 million a year, with a net profit in the low six figures. Boring, stable, and the only tier in this business where the racing itself is actually your primary product. Option 2. A NASCAR-grade intermediate superspeedway in the Charlotte or Atlanta mold. Original construction in the low millions decades ago, now worth hundreds of millions after renovation. Annual revenue in the tens of millions from ticketing, hospitality suites, sponsorship, and, as we already covered, almost everything happening on the days when stock cars are not racing at all. Net profit, realistically in the $10 to $20 million range for a well-run flagship venue, and it lives or dies on how well you fill that empty calendar. Option 3. A purpose-built Formula One circuit. Investment of $400 million to $500 million. Annual hosting fee alone, $20 million to $55 million, rising every year, paid whether or not the weekend sells out. Add insurance, FIA Grade 1 certification costs, security, and a paid staff working alongside thousands of unpaid volunteer marshals, and your operating costs before a single ticket is sold can run into the tens of millions. Without a taxpayer subsidy like Texas provides Circuit of the Americas, or without direct ownership of the sanctioning body itself, like Liberty Media has in Las Vegas, most purpose-built Formula One circuits operate at a loss on the Grand Prix weekend and have to make it back the other 51 weeks of the year. Concerts, driving schools, car launches, corporate events, anything that isn't a Formula One car. So here's the actual takeaway. A racetrack may be the only business on earth where the headline event, the thing 80,000 people paid to see, the thing that puts your name on television in 40 countries, is routinely the single worst line item on your income statement. The real profit lives in the other 350 days of the year, in taxpayer subsidies nobody wants to talk about, and in owning the calendar slot instead of just renting it. Build the track for the race you love. Make your money from all the days you don't.